Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so today we're looking under the hood, really getting into the engines of, well, power. Real power, often the unconventional kind.
That's right. We've gathered sources that really span the gamut. We're
Mhm.
talking 19th century railroad tycoons right up to, 21st century finance and AI.
And what we're finding is this surprisingly consistent playbook for how empires get built. It's not always pretty.
No, definitely not. We're exploring that gap, between the shiny public image of the visionary founder and the, let's say, more aggressive reality of gaining and keeping control.
Yeah, the sources lay out the blueprint. Industrial sabotage, tons of leverage in finance, pushing legal boundaries, even redefining company culture itself.
Exactly. Whether it's steel or software, the core tactics often involve, well, taking out the competition, using debt strategically, and sometimes operating in those gray ethical areas.
We've got some amazing details here, like the actual telegram Andrew Carnegie sent to crush a rival, or the way Jeff Bezos built this culture of near constant work.
And those financial structures that produced returns so massive, they just warped the whole market. It's pretty wild stuff.
So our mission today is to give you the inside track on these mechanisms. We want you to really get the key lessons on market disruption, how capital works, how wealth gets made and grows.
While also looking squarely at the costs,
Mm.
the cultural costs, the societal impact of this level of ambition.
Right. The goal is you walk away from this deep dive really understanding it, thoroughly informed, and maybe better equipped to see how power operates today. Okay, let's start with the originals. The pioneers' playbook for getting rid of competition. And it wasn't about, a friendly rivalry.
Not at all. It was often about total elimination. Take Andrew Carnegie. He was a master of pricing warfare.
And the specifics here are crucial, aren't they? He knew how to use information, how to use his cash reserves like a weapon.
Absolutely. Against competitors like Allegheny Bessemer, he used predatory pricing. Very calculated.
The story itself is kind of stunning. He has these railroad guys over for dinner, right? All polite, professional, civil. But the second he finds out Allegheny Bessemer is selling rails at $26 a ton, boom.
Instantly. He doesn't wait. He telegrams his right-hand man, Henry Clay Frick. The instructions are crystal clear,
Which were?
basically. Allegheny's price is just the starting point. He says, put your price at $26 and then go to $25.50 to $25 or lower if necessary.
Wow. Just undercut, undercut, undercut. Was he even making money at those prices?
Oh, definitely not in the short term. That wasn't the point.
Yeah.
The goal was corporate destruction, pure and simple.
He actually said that.
Pretty much. He wanted to bring Allegheny Bessemer to a stop in less than 6 weeks or so. He figured taking a $100,000 loss now was way better than dealing with years of annoyance from a competitor chipping away at his market.
So it's an investment, a very aggressive investment in total market control.
Yeah, exactly. And you see a similar kind of disruptive force, though maybe aimed differently, with someone like Cornelius Vanderbilt. The sources paint him as this radical figure.
He started out young, right? A boatman.
Yeah, a teenager, actually, operating outside the established monopolies, the ones with government backing for ferries and steamboats in New York.
And he just went right at them.
With sheer audacity, he deliberately broke those monopolies, slashed fares, offered faster service, just blew the old guard out of the water.
And they hated him for it, I bet.
Oh, yeah. The establishment, the wealthy elite, they condemned him. They accused him of pursuing competition for competition's sake. Like, why wouldn't you just join the club and keep prices high?
But he didn't.
No. And what's interesting is how that played politically. Because he was lowering costs, making transport accessible, he became a hero to the working class and the Jacksonian Democrats.
So the disruptor as a kind of people's champion?
In a way, yeah. His aggressive, laissez-faire style was seen as almost egalitarian, fighting the entrenched powers, offering better service cheaper. Raw, confrontational, but effective.
So the takeaway here is that massive wealth often starts with fundamentally changing the game, either by crushing rivals or breaking existing monopolies. Okay, let's jump forward. A century or so. Digital frontier. Different tools, same hunger.
Absolutely. Modern tech founders, you see them using very similar tactics, just scaled up massively. Jeff Bezos and Amazon, that get big fast mantra, dictated everything.
And it shows up in these small, telling details, like the thing about employee bus passes. Sounds trivial, right?
Right, just cutting costs. But the sources suggest something deeper, more psychological.
Which wise?
It was about culture shaping. An employee suggested subsidizing the passes, but Bezos shot it down. His reasoning. He didn't want employees to leave work to catch the bus.
Seriously, so the bus schedule created a reason to leave.
Exactly. A deadline. A pressure point to prioritize your own life over work. If you drive, your car's just sitting there. There's never any pressure to go home.
Wow, that's intense. Subordinating everything to the mission.
It's a control mechanism. And that same aggressive mindset, that control, extended to the market. Very much like Carnegie using information imbalances. Think about the Kindle launch.
Right, the e-books. They kept the price secret from publishers.
Deliberately. The plan was always $9.99 for consumers, but they didn't tell the publishers their excuse. They wanted to avoid looking like they were engaging in vertical price fixing.
Which sounds legally plausible, I guess.
It's a clever shield. Vertical price fixing is when, say, a manufacturer and retailer agree on the final price. By not telling the publishers the price, Amazon could claim they weren't fixing it.
That's the real reason.
Information advantage. They approached publishers acting like the price had not yet been decided.
Why did that matter so much? What was the impact?
Because the publishers were terrified. They worried low ebook prices would devalue their product, meaning their physical books, their whole business model. Amazon knew this.
So by withholding the $9.99 price, they kept the publishers guessing and worried.
Exactly. Kept them destabilized, dependent. Maximized Amazon's own leverage. Just like Carnegie controlled steel prices, Amazon controlled the flow of crucial pricing information for digital goods.
That control aspect is key.
Yeah.
It makes me think about the contrast in retail philosophies, like Ray Kroc at McDonald's versus Sam Walton at Walmart. Both built these huge empires on process.
But their view on the people involved was, notably different. Kroc was almost romantic about the customer interaction.
Really? McDonald's seems so systematized.
It is, but he insisted it was fundamentally a people business. He even admitted, technically they could put Big Macs, shakes, fries into vending machines, automate the whole thing.
That they wouldn't. Why not?
Yeah.
Maximum efficiency, right?
Because Kroc believed that human element was vital to the brand. He said the smile on that counter girl's face is a vital part of our image. He saw the employee interaction not just as a transaction, but as part of the product itself. Essential.
Interesting. Sam Walton, though, seems more focused on the internal dynamics, management, and motivation.
Very much so. He was adamant that success wasn't just about location, like being in small-town America. It was all about the managers, training people properly, motivating them intensely.
He really believed anyone would respond if managed right.
Deeply. He said people anywhere would respond if treated right and are given the opportunities to be properly trained. But for Walton, treated right definitely included being pushed, motivated, demanded of.
Which explains some of the more eccentric stuff, like the company cheers.
Yes.
Making executives wear silly outfits.
Exactly. He understood motivation wasn't always serious business suits. It could be goofy, fun, maybe even a bit humiliating sometimes. But it all served the purpose. Forge a unique, unified culture laser-focused on performance.
So whether it's steel, data, or burgers, control often comes down to building and enforcing a culture that demands maximum commitment.
Precisely. And if the 19th century used pricing, the late 20th century weaponized debt. Let's talk about the leveraged buyout, the LBO.
Right, the LBO machine. This era, especially the mid-'80s, sounds like a gold rush.
It really was. The returns were just off the charts, and that changed everything. When KKR, Kohlberg, Kravis, Roberts, the LBO pioneers posted their results, well, the game shifted.
The numbers are mind-boggling. 6 times their money on the 84 fund, 13 times on the 86 fund. How does that even work?
Leverage. That's the magic word.
Yeah.
In an LBO, the buyer puts down only a small slice of equity, maybe just 5 or 10%.
And the rest.
Debt, sometimes 90% or more. And crucially, that debt is secured by the assets and the future cash flow of the company being bought. The company basically pays for its own takeover.
So if you buy a company, tune it up a bit, sell it for even a modest profit, your small equity stake sees this massive return because the debt amplified it all.
Exactly. That's the multiplier effect. And that kind of success, it drew everyone in. Big Wall Street firms like Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, who initially looked down on LBOs as sort of cowboy finance.
Suddenly they wanted in.
They poured billions into it. The amount of capital and debt flying around became enormous. It fueled these huge takeover battles.
And created some pretty crazy situations, like during the RJR Nabisco deal, right? The sources paint a picture of chaos.
Oh, it was a defining moment. Total chaos during the final bidding. You had one group, key players, negotiating the deal structure, calmly having a leisurely lunch amid white tablecloths.
Like something out of a movie. Controlled, cool finance.
While literally down the hall, or in another building, the competing team, Shearson's group, was locked out past the deadline, frantically waiting for the final bid number.
That contrast is stark. Fine dining versus panic attack.
It perfectly captures that intense, almost bipolar culture of high-stakes, high-leverage finance.
But the party didn't last forever, did it? The early 90s recession hit hard.
Yeah, the music stopped, the credit market slammed shut. Banks got nervous, realizing how risky those high-debt deals were. The rules changed almost overnight.
How so?
Capital requirements shifted fundamentally. When KKR did the American Re deal, about $1.5 billion, they had to put up 20% equity.
20%. That's way more than the 5 or 10 they were used to.
Double, triple sometimes. It showed the era of easy, hyper-leveraged debt was over. More skin in the game was required.
Okay, so leverage gets reined in. What's the next evolution in financial architecture? Speed?
Velocity. Absolutely. Extreme speed in digital markets. We're talking high-frequency trading, HFT, where fortunes are made or lost in microseconds.
Sounds like science fiction.
It practically is. HFT is all about monetizing tiny slivers of time. The sources mention firms paying $40,000 a month.
40 grand a month. For what?
For a specialized data connection, an upgrade from a $25,000 a month pipe,
Right.
and the speed increase it offered. Just 2 microseconds.
2 microseconds. That's what, a 50,000th of a second? Why pay an extra $15K a month for that?
Because in HFT, that tiny edge is everything. It guarantees you get your trade in first.
Yeah.
You see the price discrepancy fractions of a second before the competition. It's arbitrage at light speed.
You're essentially jumping the queue.
Precisely. The sources say these traders were terrified of being slower than their peers. That anxiety, that fear of being second, that's what they're paying for.
That anxiety, the speed, the complexity, it feels fragile. Which brings us to something like the FTX collapse.
Spectacular implosion. You had the founder's theoretical wealth, this fleece cloud fortune, go from maybe $100 billion to basically zero in November 2022.
Just evaporated.
Right. But what's really puzzling, according to the sources, is a question raised internally during the crisis. When that $8.8 billion hole in customer funds appeared,
Yeah.
the founder, theoretically, could have covered it, or at least tried to. The sources suggest he could have borrowed, say, $25 to $30 billion from crypto banks back in late 2021. He had access to massive credit lines.
So why didn't he? Why not just take out a huge loan, plug the $8.8 billion gap, and shift the risk from customers to the lenders?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? Why didn't he make that move? It points to maybe chaos, maybe paralysis, maybe something else entirely at the heart of this massive, opaque financial engine.
Okay, so we have historical leverage, modern velocity, both leading to this massive concentration of capital, which brings us to inequality and Thomas Piketty's work.
Yes, the core idea he explores, what he calls the very foundation of society itself.
Which rests on that simple, powerful formula, RG.
Right. The rate of return on capital, R, has historically been much higher, 10 to 20 times higher than G, the rate of growth of the overall economy or income from labor.
And why is that tiny formula so incredibly important?
Because it means wealth grows faster than work pays. If you already have capital money, assets, it compounds faster than wages, or the economy generally expands.
So the rich get richer faster.
Exponentially faster over time. Historically, this allowed the wealthy class to do things other than just work for survival. It created that fundamental split. And today, it's widening the gap even within the top tiers of wealth.
Which connects to that shocking statistic about taxes in the U.S. The system seems to be working backwards for the ultra-rich.
It's stunning data. In 2009, the top 1% paid, on average, over 23% of their income in federal taxes.
Yeah.
Okay, but the top 400 taxpayers, the absolute wealthiest, they paid less than 17%.
So the richer you are, the lower your effective tax rate. How is that even possible? How did the plutocrats outfox the merely wealthy, as the source puts it?
It's largely about how income is classified. Most people earn ordinary income wages, salaries which gets taxed at the highest rates. The ultra-rich structure their wealth. So most of their gains come from capital gains, profits, from selling assets like stocks, real estate, businesses.
And capital gains are taxed at a much lower rate.
Significantly lower, historically around 15% to 20%. So by ensuring their wealth grows through assets rather than salary, they access this much lower tax rate. It's a structural advantage. The merely wealthy, like high-earning doctors or lawyers who mostly get paid salaries, don't really have access to in the same way.
So the system itself favors capital over labor when it comes to taxation at the very top. And these super rich folks, often relatively new money, how do they see themselves?
The sources suggest they often view themselves as deserving winners. They see it as a tough global competition, and they won.
Which justifies the system that benefits them.
It certainly reinforces that belief. that the financial architecture they thrive in, the one favoring capital, is somehow meritocratic. It justifies their dominance and the resulting massive concentration of wealth.
Okay, so finance provides the fuel, but control also needs culture, narrative, image. Let's look at companies where maybe speed and image took priority over other things, like Theranos.
Theranos is a textbook case, really, prioritizing the story over the science. Their main device, the Minilab or 4S, was still basically a prototype after 2.5 years of work, yet they were rushing it out the door.
And if you questioned it internally,
You were labeled. Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani, the leaders, called anyone who raised doubts a cynic and a naysayer. That kind of atmosphere. It stifles dissent. Bad news doesn't travel up.
and they used a specific regulatory loophole to avoid scrutiny, didn't they? The LDT classification.
Exactly. Laboratory-developed tests. It was a clever theory, as the source calls it. LDTs were historically tests developed and used within a single lab, facing minimal FDA oversight.
So by calling their machine an LDT process,
They bypassed the whole rigorous, expensive, time-consuming FDA approval process required for a new medical device. It was a way to get their unproven tech into Walgreens and Safeway without proving it actually worked reliably. A shortcut through the safety checks.
that deliberate sidestepping of regulation for speed, it's chilling. And it echoes in a different way the ethical issues at Purdue Pharma with OxyContin.
A truly alarming situation. The internal documents Purdue had, even before the drug was approved, showed a huge problem. About half the patients in an early study needed more OxyContin before the supposed 12-hour duration was up.
Meaning the drug wore off too soon, leading to withdrawal.
Yes, pain, withdrawal symptoms, and a powerful craving for the next dose. A recipe for dependence.
But instead of fixing the drug or the dosage schedule, they blame the patient.
Worse, they invented a condition. They coined the term pseudo-addiction.
Pseudo-addiction, what does that even mean?
It was this incredibly cynical argument that if a patient looked addicted drug-seeking, clock watching it wasn't real addiction. Oh no, it was just that their underlying pain wasn't being treated adequately.
And the solution for this pseudo-addiction?
Was horrifyingly simple. Give them more opioids. It was a way to justify escalating doses, deepening the very dependence problem they knew the drug's flaws were creating, using a made-up term to mask a deadly reality.
It's staggering. Beyond the internal culture, controlling the external narrative, the public image, is just as critical for these empire builders. Look at Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah's rise was meteoric, fueled by what Quincy Jones called an unprecedented promotional blitz after her Oscar nomination. But once she reached the top, her focus became intense image protection.
Total control over the story.
Absolutely. Her brand value depended on it. She fired staff for leaks to tabloids, and then there's that peculiar detail about her name.
Right, having staff call her Mary outside the office.
It sounds odd, but it was purely strategic. To prevent staff from accidentally dropping her name in public, potentially creating tabloid gossip, it shows this incredibly calculated effort to manage every single aspect of her public persona, which was her brand.
That impulse for control isn't new, though. William Randolph Hearst, the newspaper magnate, understood this a century earlier.
Oh, completely. Hearst admitted he'd become a nut on publicity. He told his editor, Arthur Brisbane, that promotion needed to be watched almost as carefully as their news and editorial columns. It wasn't just about reporting. It was about dominating attention.
And his strategy involved being deliberately different from the establishment paper, the New York Times.
Explicitly. When an editor suggested dropping the women's page to seem more serious, more like the Times, Hearst pushed back hard. He said, "It is desirable for us not to be like the Times, but to be sufficiently different from the Times."
Know your audience, build your niche.
Exactly. He built his empire by not imitating, by creating a distinct product for a specific readership, a different cultural taste.
And you see Roger Ailes doing something similar decades later, with cable news launching America's Talking.
Very much the same playbook. Ailes consciously avoided what he called the tabloid vulgarities of daytime TV. He saw a gap in the market,
He aimed for the heartland.
targeted the staid tastes of the heartland, positioned his channel as an alternative, something uplifting, unlike those other channels showing quote-unquote freaks.
So it's market segmentation, but framed morally or culturally.
Right. Defining yourself by what you are not, just as much as by what you are. Controlling the narrative by controlling the cultural positioning, carving out your territory.
Okay, finally, let's look at that raw psychological drive for total control. The kind that pushes founders to the edge, sometimes at great cost.
Steve Jobs at Pixar is a fascinating example of using ownership as leverage for control. Initially, Pixar's deal with Disney heavily favored Disney. They were the big guys.
But then Pixar went public, had that hugely successful IPO.
And everything changed. That IPO gave Jobs financial independence. Suddenly, he wasn't just a supplier to Disney. He was an owner of incredibly valuable intellectual property.
So he went back to Disney with new demands.
You bet. He could now demand co-branding on films, half the profits from sequels. The power dynamic totally flipped. Before the IPO, he was negotiating from need. After, he negotiated from ownership. That financial structure validated the IP's value and gave him immense leverage.
That drive for control can turn toxic, though. Look at the Gucci family in the 80s.
Oh, the Gucci family wars. Constant drama filling the gossip pages. But the weird thing, the sources note, all that negative publicity.
It actually helped sales.
Perversely, yes. More customers apparently filed into Gucci stores because of the sensational headlines. It boosted the brand's mystique, maybe. Drama and luxury seem intertwined sometimes.
But for Maurizio Gucci, who finally got the CEO job after feeling pushed around for years, that power was destructive.
He apparently felt invincible. That feeling, that achievement of total control after years of feeling powerless, it seemed to blind him. An executive said he started making arbitrary decisions, like slashing wholesale distribution without grasping the financial hit.
So the psychological need for control overrode business sense.
It seems so. The pursuit of power became an end in itself, detached from the realities of running the business. It ended badly.
That immense internal pressure. It reminds me of Elon Musk and his leadership style. The crisis mode.
Musk operates in these intense cycles, running visual simulations in his head, pushing everything to the brink, threatening mass firings even when things are actually going well, just to maintain that extreme urgency.
And didn't he even question his own state of mind at one point?
Yeah, there's an anecdote from Siobhan Zillis, a close associate. Musk apparently asked her point blank if he had gone bananas.
In her response.
She confirmed it. She said, "This was the only time I've ever walked in the room, looked at him, and said the word bananas." It's a powerful glimpse, isn't it? How that relentless drive for absolute control can push these figures and everyone around them right to the breaking point.
Okay, let's try to pull these threads together. What are the recurring themes in these blueprints for power?
Well, three things really stand out. First, the consistent value of aggressive strategy, often opaque, especially in finance and tech. Think Carnegie's pricing, KKR's leverage, Amazon's information control.
Second, the critical importance of ownership. Owning the IP, like Jobs with Pixar, structuring the capital, like the LBO kings or the ultra-rich avoiding taxes. Control the structure, control the game.
And third, that deep, almost visceral drive for control within the individuals themselves. Sometimes creative, sometimes destructive, but always intense. Kroc, Walton, Bezos, Musk. That personal drive is undeniable.
And looking ahead, this acceleration of power, of capital, of technology, it leads us to a really profound challenge. The one highlighted in the sources regarding AI and automation, particularly Kai-Fu Lee's work.
Yeah, his predictions are stark. Within, 10 to 20 years, maybe 40 to 50% of U.S. jobs could technically be automated.
That's staggering. It's not just an economic shift, it's an existential one for potentially billions of people.
It forces that fundamental question. In an age of intelligent machines, what does it mean to be human? If machines do the work, the thinking, the calculating, what's left for us? What defines our value?
The sources offer a sliver of hope, though. The idea that maybe society shifts its value.
Right, that we might collectively choose to value things like caregiving, community service, education, personal growth, things machines can't easily replicate, valuing them not just as nice-to-haves, but as a core part of a collective social project of building a more human society.
It's a big shift in thinking. Because historically, as we've seen, empire building was about controlling markets, controlling capital, which was ultimately generated by human labor and consumption. Carnegie, KKR, Bezos, they mastered that.
But if AI and automation decouple capital generation from human labor on a massive scale, as Lee predicts, then that historical purpose of controlling human-driven markets starts to fade, doesn't it?
Which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought for you, the listener, to chew on.
If the old empires were built on controlling and monetizing human effort,
what's the ultimate purpose of the new empires, the digital ones, when maybe half of human effort is no longer economically necessary for generating wealth?
when capital becomes almost self-generating, detached from widespread human labor, What human endeavor, stripped bare of economic necessity, will actually define our value, our purpose as a species going forward.